ਜੀ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਸੋਚ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਕਾਲੀਰਾਏ। ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਔਰ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਈ ਹੌਟ ਟਾਪਿਕ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਉਹ ਨਵੰਬਰ 4 ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੀ ਵੋਟ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਰੇ ਸਟੇਟ ਤੇ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਰੈਫਰੈਂਡਮ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਦੇ ਹੱਕ 'ਚ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਹੈ। ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਇਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦੇ, ਉਹ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਬਣਾਏ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ 2021 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟਸ ਸਾਰੇ ਬਣਾਏ ਗਏ ਸੀ। ਇੰਡੀਪੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਕਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਸੀ। ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇਤਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਸ਼ੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਹੱਥ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਤਾਲਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਆ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟਸ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ ਜਾਊਗੀਆਂ ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਰੀਜ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਟੈਕਸਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟਸ ਰੀਡਰਾ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗਵਰਨਰ ਹੈਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੀ ਮੈਜੋਰਿਟੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਅਸੈਂਬਲੀ ਲੈਜਿਸਲੇਚਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨ ਸੀਟਸ ਵਧਾਉਣੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟਿਕ ਲੈਜਿਸਲੇਚਰ ਹੈਗਾ, ਗਵਰਨਰ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਾਏ ਬਣਾਈ ਆ ਵੀ ਜੋ ਟੈਕਸਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧੂ ਹੋਊਗਾ, ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਰਕ ਪਏਗਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਕੰਪਨਸੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜੇ 5 ਟੈਕਸਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਮਿਲੂਗੀਆਂ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨਸ ਨੂੰ, ਤੇ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਹੀ ਕੰਪਨਸੇਸ਼ਨ 5 ਮਿਲ ਜਾਊਗੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਰਕ ਨਾ ਪਵੇ, ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਵਾਧੂ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਔਰ ਇਲਜ਼ਾਮ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਲਗਾਇਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਟਰੰਪ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇਹਨੇ ਇਹ ਚਿੰਜੜੀ ਛੇੜੀ ਹੈ। ਆਓ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇਮਸ ਸੂਚ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਇਹ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਸੈਕਰਾਮੈਂਟੋ ਸਟੇਟ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ, ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਐਕੈਡੈਮਿਕਲੀ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਿਆ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ। Welcome to Aaj Kal America, James. That was just a brief introduction on Proposition 50, the history behind it. Briefly, we had an independent commission that drew the district lines back in 2021. And now in 2025, we have our politicians telling us we need Proposition 50 to redraw them. In one view, it's more of a wrestling match or a punching fight between Texas and California because they're trying to compensate. Uh, Texas is playing a dirty game, therefore we have to fight back. Also, the president, POTUS 47, President Trump, is being accused of inciting this change in Texas. Therefore, we need to compensate in California. That's really a layman's description of what's going on, but I'm hoping that you could educate us better and we can be more enlightened what's going on with Proposition 50. At an introduction, can you give us a brief details of James Such, professor at Sacramento State, and then we'll break into the Proposition 50.
Sure. First of all, my last name is pronounced Shoch, like electric shock. You know, it's everybody pronounces it.
My apologies.
That's how you. It's sure. It's as
we British sound pronounce the alphabet really.
Yeah, it's as if it had a K on the end instead of an H. I taught for 10 years at Dartmouth College and then another 10 years at Sacramento State, specializing in American politics. I taught classes on political parties and interest groups. My research and writing is on political economy, particularly the politics of trade policy. I wrote a book on trade policy, party politics and trade policy. I co-edited another book on Democratic and Social Democratic parties in the U.S. and Western Europe, and have written a number of articles on the politics of various types of economic policy.
Okay, well, thank you on that. My brief introduction was pretty much a layman's description of what's happening with Proposition 50 or why it's on the ballot come November 4th. Could you give us more of a background as to what brings Proposition 50 into the electoral field for November 4th?
Sure. I mean, I think your summary, the English language summary that I heard was very good. I mean, this dates back, I would say, and this would be controversial in some quarters, but in preceding the 2010 census redistricting or census, and then the following redistricting, the Republicans pretty smartly figured out that they could benefit from redistricting if they can take control of state legislatures around the country, which would then redistrict after the 2010 census. So they did. They captured many state legislatures, and then they proceeded to redistrict in their favor in the decade that followed. Um, and that they picked up that way a lot of House seats. So what we saw in the subsequent years was a kind of competitive redistricting battle as Democratic-controlled states tried to redistrict in their favor, and Republicans would do the same again. So we've gotten to this point where we've got upcoming midterm elections for a president who's extremely controversial. I would say we can talk later, quite unpopular by historic standards. And so he's worried, and all the polls show and history shows that the Democrats are likely to take back, not the Senate, that's unlikely, but to take back the House of Representatives. And President Trump recognizes this, as his Republican colleagues do, and he's anxious to try to prevent that. So he did press Texas and Missouri and Indiana and other states, but Texas being by far the most important, to redistrict to try to pick up an additional, as I think you probably said in your Punjabi introduction, to pick up another 5 seats in Texas. And Gavin Newsom, although abstractly opposed to redistricting or gerrymandering, redistricting for partisan purposes, thinks that you can't unilaterally disarm. You got to fight fire with fire, whatever metaphor he uses. And so the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee actually did through the lines. He turned it into an initiative, presented it to the Democrat-controlled state legislature. They put it on the ballot, and the voters will now decide whether the Democrats can pick up 5 seats in California to offset what the Republicans will gain in Texas. I should say the Republicans we're going to pick up a seat in Missouri, probably 3 more in Florida, another 1 or 2 in Ohio. So in this competitive redistricting battle, the Republicans will probably come out ahead, but the Democrats are trying to minimize those losses with the California issue.
I appreciate that detailed overview of what's happening, why Proposition 50 is on the ballot. One of the things I've heard is Texas actually had a problem with their original districts, and it was the courts that ordered them to redo them. Is there any foundation there?
I haven't heard anything about courts ordering it to redo them. Harmeet Dillon, who's the Deputy Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, sent Texas legislators and the governor a letter saying that it was a racial gerrymandering in Texas on behalf of minority voters, and that needed to change. To my mind, that's a total pretext. I mean, the lines were drawn in 2020 by a Republican legislature. When they heard or read Dillon's letter, they were taken aback because they by no means thought that they were conducting a racial gerrymander. So they were initially opposed, but the Trump administration, and so I do think her letter was a pretext for accomplishing Trump's political goals, which was trying to get five more Republican seats in the House, and he pressured them. Within 2 days of her letter, he pressured them to do this, and they complied. Okay. I should also add that.
Definitely.
And let me also add that Ms. Dillon did not send any other letters to any other states charging them with racial gerrymandering, in which she might have done to blue states, where you might possibly have more convincingly made the argument. And Donald Trump has applied pressure to numerous other states to gerrymandering, to try to redistrict without any kind of accompanying argument about racial gerrymandering in those states. So I just think it's quite obvious this is a political fight started by Republicans, but as part of a long history of competitive gerrymandering, but started by Trump in this case, and to which Newsom is responding.
Okay. Coming back to California, we accept that the nationwide tidal waves, or whatever we want to call them, that are happening in terms of gerrymandering or redistricting in other states, and California's effort to compensate, my wording. Uh, there are sort of various challenges that are coming out, um, legal challenges. I believe Steve Hilton has put one up, and some people in the legislature have put one up. From a political, legal process, is there anything that they could do in the next 5 to 6 weeks that might prevent the November 4th election, or will we still have the November 4th election?
I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not all that familiar with election law in California, but I'd be stunned if they succeed in these challenges. I mean, redistricting hasn't been stopped anywhere that I'm aware of where it's legally permissible. Mid-decade redistricting is permissible under these conditions. I mean, Gavin Newsom did have to change the Constitution to do it, but he's done it through the legislature. He's put it on had the legislature put it on the ballot. I can't see any legal maneuver that will prevent the election from going forward, although there are suits filed in almost every direction by both parties for anything that's done these days.
Um, let's look at it from post November 4th. The election happens, they've got the results come in. One side or the other obviously is going to come out ahead. And there will probably be challenges again in the judicial arena. Do you foresee that happening, or are we locked in once we voted on November 4th? Whatever we as the
I,
Californians have decided, we get it, and no politician can mess with us, or there's going to be challenges, whether it comes from the federals or whether it comes from within our state. Do you foresee any of that?
Yeah, I think because, as I said, almost every maneuver either party takes is challenged in the courts. We'll see them. Again, I'm not an expert on these legal matters, but because most of such challenges are defeated, uh, I would doubt that the legal challenges in this case would succeed, and I suspect we are locked in for using these districts. If it passes in November, we'll be locked into using those districts for the following November.
Okay, just at a general level, uh, having discussed why we have Proposition 50, it's on the ballot, what the politicians have done, they've put it out there. Obviously, there's opposition to it. And just hearing the news media this morning, there's a lot of money being poured in from both sides. So obviously, the big bears are coughing up the money to put up this fight. Uh, from a social California perspective, what would you advise the voters of California do in this regard of Proposition 50, party politics aside, just general welfare of California?
It's hard to put politics aside. I mean, I do think that if the aim of the initiative is to help the Democrats take back the House of Representatives to serve as a check on Donald Trump in his remaining 2 years of the presidency, and as admittedly a progressive Democrat, I think that's what needs to happen. And I think for the welfare of Californians, they should support this initiative, and that they should, cast their votes for Democratic candidates the following November to apply that check on Trump. Um, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure I could divorce politics from the question.
Totally understand that. Let's assume that the yes vote gets the results in November 4th. We've counted them. And obviously, there's only this measure on the ballot on November 4th. So counting should not be that much of a difficult task. compared to previous years. It's normally taken them a long period of time to actually announce the final results. I assume that this time we can get it done within a day or two, or at least within the first few days by Friday of that week, maybe. We have the numbers in hand. And for argument's sake, yes, people got it, and they got it with a what you call it as a sort of a, hairline majority. Are we inclined to see further challenges on this if that happens? And equally, if the no people got it with a hairline majority, are we likely to see this combat issue fighting continue? Because in 2030, we're going to have another census. We're going to have a count of the California people. And are we still going to I think what I want to ask is, once they've had this vote, what happens to the independent commission?
Well, the initiative provides that we revert back to the independent commission after the 2030 elections. We're going to have a census, another census. They're going to have to then reapportion or redraw the lines anyway. And Gavin Newsom, anticipating that lots of voters, not just in California but nationally, don't approve of gerrymandering, this is a temporary measure. So we will revert to an independent commission. And my understanding is that because doing away temporarily with the independent commission required a constitutional amendment to return back to partisan line drawing after 2030. In other words, to do away with the restored independent commission would require another constitutional amendment. So, Gavin Newsom, I think, rightly saw this should be a temporary measure, and it will be a temporary measure.
And as a voter who's just a common guy going grocery shopping and everything else, not deeply involved in this, but I care about what happens with California. What I think I heard from you is the measure is put forward as a temporary, and come 2030, we will not have to re-vote to bring in the independent commission back in to redraw the district lines. They will be there. So this is just a stopgap measure, temporary, just for 2025 and 26. Will it impact us in 28 and 30? Because the census happens in 30, and then any commission that's established will impact 32. So my understanding is 28 and 30 will be impacted, just like 26 will be. But whatever the independent commission does will be in 32. But as a voter who wants to maintain independence and everything else, I can anticipate that the 2030 census will happen, and we will still have an independent commission, although 26, 28, and 30 elections may be impacted by Prop 50.
Correct. Exactly right.
Okay. On your analysis, let's say the no people win and this ballot is defeated come November 4th. Are we likely to see any other activity politically on the legislative arena or the judicial arena?
Well, unless, as you said a minute ago, that the election is so close that there's enough, the margin is narrow enough that it could compel a recount. And I'm actually not sure what the law is with regard to recounts for initiatives as opposed to individual candidate campaigns. But it's possible that the losing side, in this case you're saying that the pro people, could ask for a recount, and so it could be that could happen. I'm not sure what legal challenges are available besides demanding or pushing for a recount. But and the only other way to bring back partisan redistricting between now and the midterms would be another initiative, which isn't going to happen. So I don't expect to be much controversy after this uh, except for the possibility of a recount if it's close. I should say that the latest poll that just came out from the Washington Post shows yes on 50 leading by a 54 to 31% margin, which is almost exactly what you would expect given the balance of party registration in California. You know, it's a pretty strongly Democratic state, so I would expect it won't be that close. But perhaps if the money that's being spent by the opponents, you know, turns enough mind, there's still 20 or so percent of people are undecided, so it's possible it could tip the other way. But I wouldn't expect that to happen. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly controversial, close or controversial election.
So, what I'm hearing is the results of November 4th, in your opinion, will be very decisive. So, regardless if it's a yes or a no, whoever wins it will win with a substantial majority, at least in the vote count. If I heard correctly, what you're saying is by June, which is when the first primary happens after this measure is done with, we don't expect any challenges. One, because the vote's going to be significant, and two, there's not really much playroom or time to be bringing in additional things to make changes, far short of judicially claiming that it was illegal, it's not legally correct, or whatever the challenges the lawyers may bring forward. We can anticipate that, but we don't anticipate a political change following November 4th, because it's going to be one way or the other, and it's not going to be a hairline majority like I was originally suggesting. I know we're talking about congressional seats here. Does this impact our assembly, our Senate at the state level, and our counties, supervisorial, and the city councils? Is there any impact on that through Proposition 50?
No, as I understand it, only reflects congressional votes.
So basically, then, for me to understand this, it's only to do with the federal component, which is the congressional seats, and that is primarily because of the fight, if that's the right word, that's been instigated on a federal level, and California is just stepping up to provide its punch, if it may be the right wording for that.
Fight and punch are the right words, definitely.
Okay. I know you said as a individual with your own political opinions or feelings, thoughts, whatever, that you propose or you would vote yes on this measure. If you remove that hat of being political on one side, is there any reasons or any arguments that you could see the validity of from the vote no?
Sure. I mean, I think on principle, partisan redistricting or gerrymandering is a bad idea anywhere. The problem with it is that it creates safe seats. Increasing numbers of safe seats controlled, almost in perpetuity by either the Republicans or the Democrats. That means that the politicians, candidates, and those subsequently elected don't really have to be accountable to the mainstream of public opinion in the district. They only really need to be accountable to their partisan bases, which means that then they cater to their primary voters, who are the ones that make up the core of their partisan bases. Well, primary voters on both sides of the aisle are more extreme than the overall electorate in congressional districts. So Republicans are more conservative, Democratic primary voters are more liberal. The candidates take more conservative or liberal positions. They get to Congress, partisan polarization increases, and you have partisan battles break out, gridlock. It's not a good way to conduct our elections. But again, if one side does it, it's hard for the other side to resist. So, and I think that's why Gavin Newsom designed it the way he did. He said, one, he wasn't going to go ahead with this if Texas did. and he made it temporary because he hopes that after 2028 there'll be a Democratic president and maybe a Democratic Congress, and the temperature will be lowered and this won't be necessary. It was also political reality. He knows that voters in principle also don't like it, and so making this temporary is politically smart. But to your point, abstractly, I think partisan gerrymandering is a bad idea.
Sure. And on a individual level, we know Texas is doing this, but as Californians, do we really need to get into the Texas fight, or is this not a Texas fight?
Not a Texas fight, not mainly a Texas fight. I mean, Texas is firing the first big shot in this current round of partisan battles, but it's a national fight, and that's why, as I said, numbers of other Republican states are considering, and Missouri's already approved redistricting. Other Democratic states are considering it too: Maryland, Illinois, maybe Oregon, although those states are already pretty heavily gerrymandered, so they won't pick up many seats there if they do. But this is a national fight, and I can't see how we can avoid it.
I think the other question I have is in 24, we did see a voter shift um, within the Kamala Harris vote and the Donald Trump vote at the president level. Yes, Kamala Harris did win California, but many argue that it wasn't as significant as it could have been, and there are various um, waves or changes happening across California where there was a noticeable shift in the California population towards the Donald Trump side or the Republican side. Do you think that shift of 2024, whatever the reasons the politicians or the media or anybody else could give us to justify the shift in the population vote towards the Republican side or Donald Trump as opposed to Kamala Harris, is that likely to be seen again come November 4th? Or are we going to possibly trigger a bigger shift come 26 when the people actually vote in their own districts? Even though the districts get drawn to be favorable to one side or the other, is it possible that the individual people may turn around and say, okay, we don't want this?
It's possible. I mean, I think what we'll see in California is what we're going to see nationwide, which is a referendum on Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Midterm elections are essentially, historically shows, referenda on the president and the president's party. And here, the out party, the party not holding the presidency, virtually always gains seats. Since the Civil War, as far back as the Civil War, there have only been 4 elections in which the out party, the party not holding the presidency, hasn't picked up seats. 1860 something, 1902, 1998, when the Republicans tried to impeach Bill Clinton or did impeach Bill Clinton, 2002, when George Bush was riding high in the wake of 9/11. Every other election, the Democrats or the out party picks up seats. And in fact, the average gain for the out party in midterm elections, the president's midterm election for a president's party, the out party gain is 25 seats. If the Democrats pick up 25 seats in 2026, all they need is 3, so they'll take back the House with a commanding advantage. Now, it's not going to be. So I suspect the Democrats, there won't be the kind of shift you're saying. I think right now President Trump is in an average of about 44% approval rating. No president with less than 50% approval rating has ever seen his House, his party gain seats or hold seats in the House of Representatives. So I think we're likely to see the Democrats make significant gains, but there's reasons why they won't be anywhere near 25 seats, and it's going to be really close. And this is why, in part, why Governor Newsom has gone. This is why Trump pushed Texas to redistrict in the first place, and why Governor Newsom responded in return, because it's going to be a close fight, and 5 seats, one way or the other, could matter. But I don't expect what you're saying, which is a swing toward the Republicans. The question will be how big a swing away from the Republicans will it be before that swing is big enough for them to lose the House. They said the Senate's another matter. we could talk about it if you want, but the Republicans are still likely to hold the Senate.
I understand that. So if we go by history, the individual or the party that holds the White House usually ends up losing congressional seats in the midterm, and that's what historically has been demonstrated. Then is all this really necessary, or is it because we have a fairly even split in Congress that it's a handful of seats that can push legislation one way or the other? And if we look at the recent vote they took on AOC, because of her comments, they wanted to censor her or remove her from certain committees. It took 4 Republicans to vote the other way and say, no, she stays as she is. So when there's only 4 votes that can make that significant change, come 26, based on what we've been talking about, we don't expect a much big change as we've had in previous years. If we're 4 majority or 5 majority for the Republicans, we anticipate we could go to a 4 or 5 majority for the Democrats. Therefore, it's really today we sit on the right side, lean a little bit to the right. Come 26, January 27, we may be leaning a little to the left. And what I'm sensing is because we anticipate a 4 or 5 seat difference, one way or the other, this battle becomes significant. And the other piece of this, how much do you think it will play into Gavin Newsom's effort to be the candidate for president in 28?
It's a good question. Let me just say that it was not AOC that they were voting on. It was Ilhan Omar, a congressperson from Minnesota. Although they're both members of the Squad, the liberal faction.
My mistake.
Yes, Gavin. I'm sure one of Newsom's motivations in doing this isn't simply to assist the Democrats in their battle to control the House, but to boost his own presidential ambitions. And it certainly boosted his status within the Democratic Party. I mean, there are many folks who think he's too California, he's too blow-dried, he's too slick, but and many he got considerable criticisms for on his podcast, bringing on someone like Steve Bannon, making conciliatory comments about Trump on some things. But then he stepped forward, and all of a sudden he's become in the vanguard of this fight against Texas's redistricting, and the views of Democratic voters have changed toward him have changed. So if you look at the polling now, it's very early, and people won't know who the candidates are, but he's got a significant lead amongst those candidates who oppose to people answering polls about who they want to be the Democratic nominee. So, this has definitely boosted his chances as he wanted them to, and it's just helping him. Now, what this does for the possibility of actually getting elected president in 2028 is another matter.
I understand. I appreciate your time, Jim, and I appreciate the input that you provided. I believe it's more of academic level than party politics, and that's what my view I wanted. And I think our final touch was the argument that some people on the other side are making. It's more of a Newsom issue than a Republican Texas or California issue. And it's an effort to gain the limelight. It's an effort to be the shining star. And come the primaries in the Democratic Party of 28, Newsom expects to be the nominee and the candidate. So we'll see what happens. The arguments are going to be there. We're going to be witnessing that over the next 5 or 6 weeks. And maybe after November 4th and the election numbers are in, we can muster up some more time and discuss what we expect to see post November 4th. But we'll have our discussion offline on that one. I appreciate your time. If anybody wants to consult with you, you want to share your number or your details as faculty at Sac State?
You could write me if you want at James Shoch, JamesShoch at hotmail.com. Be happy to take questions there.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jim, for your time. And obviously, you educated me, and I'm assuming that the audience will be educated on a nonpartisan method, regardless of yes, you are a Democrat, progressive, if that be, and you've already stated that. So, but I still regard what you said more of an independent history, purpose, and the efforts behind it. And I appreciate your time on that. Thank you very much.
Glad to have been with you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. जी इजाजत देवो ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਸੋਚ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਕਾਲੀਰਾਏ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਜੇਮਸ ਸੂਕ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਸੈਕਰਮੈਂਟੋ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਚ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਇਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 50 ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਨਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦੇਵੋ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਗਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ Thank you, James. I'll send you the version once it's ready to go on air. And then you can give me feedback on it.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope to stay connected and I hope sort of learn more from you in times to come.
Sure, and I'd be happy to discuss the results of November 4th any way you like.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.